I stepped outside my door into a world draped in a pristine, white silence, the kind of snow that transforms everything into a scene from a holiday postcard. Trees stood lightly dusted, rooftops bore thick layers of fluff, and even the mailboxes resembled frosted cupcakes. It was breathtaking, until my gaze fell upon a slip of paper taped to my front door. It wasn't a cheerful greeting or a neighborly note. It was a violation noticia, Dula 200 fine for failing to shovel my sidewalk by 7 a.m. The absurdity struck me. It was only 8:15, and snow still drifted down in gentle flurries. Then I saw her, Margaret, the HOA president, standing across the street on her immaculate driveway, arms crossed like a general inspecting her ranks. She waved with 2 fingers, a smug smile on her face, sipping from a steaming mug as if this were just another triumph in her reign. That was the moment I knew this wouldn't end with a civil exchange. This was war. The fine itself wasn't devastating. I could pay it, but the principal gnawed at me. I'd just finished a grueling 16-hour shift at the hospital, stumbling home near midnight with barely enough energy to kick off my shoes before collapsing into bed. I'd set my alarm for 9 a.m. to clear the snow, assuming the neighborhood wouldn't unravel if I delayed a couple of hours. But under Margaret's iron rule, even the weather adhered to a timetable. I crumpled the notice in my fist, retreated inside, and sank into a chair at my kitchen table, a heavy realization settling in. This wasn't her first petty power play, but this time, it felt personal. Let me describe Margaret, mid-50s, with platinum hair sculpted into a judgmental helmet, always clad in coordinated tracksuits as if heading to a suburban fitness championship. Her entire existence revolved around the HOA rulebook, most of which she'd authored herself. She patrolled the neighborhood twice daily, clipboard and ruler in hand, measuring lawns, inspecting trash bins, and photographing imaginary infractions. Her front yard was a monument to regulatory perfectiono norms, no bird feeders, not a leaf astray. Her mailbox even bore a laminated copy of the HOA guidelines, a passive-aggressive shrine to her authority. When I moved here 2 years ago, Margaret greeted me not with warmth or a casserole, but with a list of friendly reminders: garbage cans must be stowed within 30 minutes of pickup, grass couldn't exceed 2 inches. It wasn't advice, it was a decree. At first, I complied, keeping quiet, shoveling when I could, skipping Halloween decorations because their hues clashed with her seasonal palette. But this fine was my breaking point. I resolved to confront her. I marched across the snowy street, boots crunching, breath clouding in the frigid air. She stood in her doorway, as if anticipating my arrival. "Morning," I said, holding up the notice. She sipped her mug. "Morning. I see you got your notice. When exactly did you issue this?" The snows barely stopped. Her lips tightened into a smile. "The rules are clear. Sidewalks must be cleared within 1 hour of snowfall ending. Per my weather app, that was 6:12 a.m. My eye twitched. I work nights. I got home after midnight. No grace period." She raised an eyebrow. "Exceptions wouldn't be fair to everyone else. Rules are rules." I glanced around. Every other sidewalk still bore snow. No one else shoveled. "They will," she replied, "or they'll be fined too." That smug smirk ignited something in me, a permanent shift. This wasn't about snow or sidewalks, it was about control. Margaret had ruled unchallenged for years. I turned and left without another word, but a plan was already forming. Back home, I sat with a coffee, scrolling the HOA group chat. Complaints about Margaret's tyranny flooded in. A neighbor fined for a basketball hoop disrupting the aesthetic, another forced to repaint their house because the blue was too coastal, someone ordered to remove a porch swing for creaking too loudly. I wasn't alone, she was a menace. Then inspiration struck like a snowball to the face. If she'd weaponized snow against me, I'd retaliate in kind. I researched snow machines, not push-along clearers, but the industrial kind ski resorts use. I found a rental service 3 towns over, pricey but perfect. That night, staring at her pristine driveway, I pictured it buried under 3 feet of artificial snow, her car entombed, her walkway obliterated, her solar lights smothered. My pulse quickened. The plan was bold, but with darkness, silence, and precision, it could work. Revenge would be cold and glorious. I spent the next day lying low. Margaret said nothing more, but I felt her gaze on my house like a predator stalking prey. Her silence was louder than any reprimand. She was gloating quietly, letting the fine speak. What she didn't know was that while she savored her peppermint tea, I was plotting, digging into her habits, her hold over us. Every tyrant has a flaw. I just needed to find hers. I casually asked neighbors about her, and stories poured out. Tom, 2 doors down, was fined for a coiled garden hose lingering too long. Lisa had to repaint her door because it clashed with Margaret's wreaths. A teen, Ethan, lost his basketball hoop for disrupting VY Sewell harmony. She'd terrorized us for years under the guise of property values, and no one had resisted. They bowed, fearing worse. I obtained the HOA rule book, a tome thicker than some textbooks. Buried in footnotes were rules Margaret had slipped in over the past 2 years, unapproved by vote. Decorative elements require presidential approval, dispute subject to discretionary assessment. She turned the HOA into her personal fiefdom, but this overreach was her vulnerability. An older neighbor, George, shared how he'd once complained to the regional office. Margaret retaliated with a fine for an unsanctioned birdbath, DRI, VYing him to move. No wonder people stayed silent. But I had EVY Denke and motive now. I needed an ally. I called my college friend Mark, an event manager familiar with snow machines. He laughed for 5 minutes when I explained. You're serious? You want to bury her driveway in a fake blizzard? She fined me lot 200 for not shoveling fast enough, I said. This is community served YC. He agreed to help. We rented a commercial-grade snowmaker, complete with a generator and water hookup. We'd strike under cover of night the coldest night forecast, Friday. I mapped camera angles, rehearsed paths, and muffled the machine's noise. On Thursday, I stashed it in a rented van 2 blocks away, hidden under a tarp. Everything was set. Then, an unexpected Wysider, Ellen, a quiet woman from the corner house, knocked. I heard what happened, she said, stepping inside cautiously. Margaret's watching you. Let her, I replied. She handed me screenshots from the HOA's internal chat room. Margaret planned fines preemptively, bragged about catching people off guard, and bent rules to maintain control. This could remove her, I said. Ellen shook her head. Only if people stand up. They won't. That's when I realized the snow wasn't just revenge, it was a statement. If I could make Margaret powerless for one night, others might find courage. Friday night arrived, cloaked in biting cold. At 2:47 a.m., I stood by the van, breath steaming. The neighborhood slept. I wheeled the machine to Margaret's property, positioning it behind a hedge with a clear shot at her driveway. Her car sat neatly parked, her walkway salted perfect order. I powered up the machine, and snow hissed out, blanketing her concrete. Layer by layer, I buried her world. A light flicked on in her house. I froze, ducking low. The curtain moved, but no one emerged. I resumed, faster, until her driveway vanished under 3 feet of snow, her door blocked, her car a white mound. It was poetic justice. I hauled the machine back, erased my tracks, and slipped home by 5 a.m., exhausted but exhilarated. At 6:58, I watched from my window as Margaret stepped out in her robe, mug in hand. She sank waist-deep into the snow, flailing, mug tumbling. She scrambled back inside after 3 tries. I laughed until my coffee nearly spilled. She couldn't blame the weather, no snow was forecast. Better yet, she couldn't pin it on me. No EVY Denke remained. By 8 a.m., the group chat buzzed with photos of her buried house. What happened? Karma's got a snowplow. Margaret raged about vandals, demanded footage, threatened fines that no one cared. Laughter replaced fear. She shoveled futilely all day, slipping, struggling. The snow, compacted by the machine, mocked her efforts. By evening, her kingdom remained entombed, and the forecast promised no melt for days. The neighborhood shifted. Margaret's next movie, a desperate notice about property sabotage, only fueled the jokes. Blizzard of Oak Street, memes spread. She interrogated neighbors, but got nowhere. Her emergency HOA meeting flopped when a board member quit, and another resisted her audit plan. Then Carl, a retired accountant, exposed her misuse of HOA funds, landscaping, lights, all for her house. A petition to oust her soared, signed by 70 fan tram of us. Her reign crumbled. At the final meeting, EVY Denke buried her. She was voted out unanimously. New leaders emerged, rewriting rules for fairness. Margaret retreated, a shadow in her once perfect home. I never confessed, but the neighborhood healed. Barbecues, laughter, freedom returned. One night, passing her dark house, I smiled. Justice wasn't just Soviet, it was snow blasted into legend. Oak Street was ours again.